up until recently, seasonal and long-range forecast models represented part of the atmosphere, but only part, and typically in a vertical terminated at around 40 kilometres. That might sound a long way from the surface, but in terms of the atmosphere, you're actually cutting the stratosphere in half when you do that. The stratosphere extends up to 50-odd kilometres. That means that anything going on in the stratosphere is only poorly represented in a computer model. And there's a whole body of research that has pointed to key processes that happen up there that can give rise to cold air outbreaks in Europe. Things like extended cold winters and blocking, which is a crucial process for giving extreme weather over Europe. So these links were not properly represented in previous forecast systems, and by having a bit of extra computing power and raising the lid of the model, we were able to include them.
And you're talking about previous forecasts. The main example that is used is the 2009 to 2010 winter, because that winter you weren't able to forecast that. That was the extreme winter in the UK.
That's right. 2009-10 was the most easterly winter on record, so the winds were coming from the east. So much that winter, that's on average, compared to a usual winter where the winds come from the west, there was actually no net wind, so the anomaly was so strong from the east. So almost 350 years of records. And in terms of the forecast for that winter, there was a weak signal for easterlies, but it wasn't enough to overwhelm the amount of warming in the model over the long term. And so in terms of predicting temperatures, most centres were unable to get a good signal in their seasonal forecast. However, when we've increased the vertical resolution in the model, the stratospheric processes that were playing a role in that winter, then we can improve the forecast and produce a colder signal over Europe retrospectively. Now, very key to when we do this, what we do is we go back to November 1st, 2009, and using only the information that we had at that time, we repeat the forecast and show that it's improved with this new model.
Now, using the new model, Block A4, it simulates these sudden stratospheric warmings. Can you give us a bit more detail on what that is and what exactly the model does in terms of its simulation?
So every 2 or 3 years or so, higher in the stratosphere, the usual westerly winds break down and become easterly. At the same time, there's a rapid temperature rise over the Arctic, up at 30 to 50 kilometres, maybe as much as 50 degrees in a few days. That's very alien to what we're used to at the surface, where the temperature might change by a few degrees on the surface, but the air up there is quite thin, so when the circulation changes, you can get large changes in temperature. Now that might seem a long way from the surface, but what happens over the next few weeks is that those easterly winds burrow down through the atmosphere until they reach about 10 kilometres above the surface, and they start to tickle the top of the weather system and a jet stream in the Atlantic, and they cause the jet stream to shift southwards, and it's that allows the easterly wind from Siberia into Western Europe and gives us a cold winter.
Of course, that is important to allow you to, in a sense, predict a little bit better the whole season. What else do you need to know in order to improve this yet further?
So this is just one step in a long chain of planned improvements that we have, and including the vertical resolution on the stratosphere, or up to the atmosphere if you like, is a stepping stone to improving the forecast. There is no single silver bullet that will solve the long-range forecast problem, and so we're planning other things like increasing horizontal resolution. We've recently included Arctic sea ice in the forecasting system, and so there are many other things. There's a whole set of pieces to this puzzle that we have to include before we've got really the best solution to the long-range forecast problem, and this is just one of several.
It's no single bit, and yet there is quite a lot of interest internationally, isn't there? I mean, I suppose the higher up you go, the more international the forecast can be as well, can't they?
So the forecasts are automatically global. These run a global climate model, so the computer model at the heart of the forecast system models the weather and the climate on the whole globe. That means that as well as producing forecasts for Europe, you are also churning out forecasts for everywhere else in the world. And I guess the real use of these is not whether you want to plan your holiday in 6 months' time, but planning for things like the increased risk of drought in arid regions of the world, increased risk of flooding in the wet season in certain parts of the world. And what we're trying to do really is to develop long-range forecasts from climate services, if you like, to be the parallel of what is currently done to weather forecasting.
Adam Scaife at the UK Met Office there. And you're listening to with me, Deutsche on DW. Online at dw.de/Spectrum, and you can, of course, follow us at DW_SciTech.
Digital Europe, bringing the continent's to your ears.
It might not be long before Xbox equipment becomes a natural part of operating theatres, like scalpels and disinfectants, and it could ease the way that surgeons work. Using new software installed on hardware that's normally used for video games, surgeons will be able to consult images like brain scans and even manipulate them during surgery without the use of a mouse or a keyboard, just by waving their hands in the air. Guilherme Correia da Silva reports from Portugal that the technology has been developed. It may be obvious, but worth pointing out all the same. When surgeons operate, there's the one important rule they all have to follow. They have to keep their hands clean and away from anything that can transmit germs. Portuguese neurosurgeon Alexandre Campos knows the rule well. Before going into theater, Campos scrubs up like every surgeon should, carefully washing his hands and forearms. The whole process takes him about 20 minutes. But during surgery, there's always the chance that he might have to do things that could recontaminate his hands. While operating, he might have to consult CT scans or MRI scans for detail on a patient's brain.
The best way to explain this is to compare with a map that we are using to go from Germany to France. You cannot memorize every corner, every crossroad, and so you have to always check the map to see where are you going now.
To follow that map, Campos usually uses a mouse and a keyboard on a computer, but they're not germ-free. So, to avoid scrubbing it again, he has to ask someone else to operate the computer for him.
It's not practical to break the security barrier. So you ask someone in the room, can you move the images, please? Can you take a measurement, for instance? But the people in the room, probably they don't know what you want. Take a measurement of what? So if you know what you want and you can do it without breaking the security barrier, it's much easier.
So, Campos asks tech experts at Wydreams to help him. Wydreams is a Portuguese company that specializes in interactive technology. Together, they've developed software that allows doctors to consult or manipulate images that are necessary for surgery without touching any devices, just by moving their hands in the air. It looks a lot like the film Minority Report, in which the actor Tom Cruise twists and waves his hands in order to see so-called pre-crime images on a screen in front of him. The software that Wydreams started developing 10 months ago is called Yscope, and it looks like a real-world version of our sci-fi dreams.
Now it drops a few in the beginning.
Here at the Wydreams headquarters, close to the Portuguese capital, Lisbon, computer engineers are busy experimenting and testing new technologies. There are computers, tables, and screens everywhere. On one side of the room is a big flat screen, and below it, there's scanners, a motion sensor usually used for video games on the Xbox. But they're not here for gaming today. They are connected to Yscope. A software tech engineer demonstrates Yscope, while project manager Fernando Nabais explains what's happening on the screen.
Now we're zooming in, and we opted for an interface solution that mimics what they're already very used to.
To zoom in, he closes his hand in the air as if grabbing something invisible. Keeping his hand closed, he moves his hand down as if scrolling the cursor down while clicking.
I wouldn't allow it to be faster than a mouse. Of course it's not faster than a mouse, but it saves time because the doctors don't need to break up sterility and scrub again, clean themselves again with soap some time. And in that situation, considering this, of course, it's not faster.
This is not the first time that the kind of technology has been used to manipulate medical images freely, but Fernando Nabais says right now this is the most fully realized application of its kind.
If you look for medical image manipulation in YouTube, for instance, you will see 30, 40 applications in this area. But I don't think you see applications, you see technological demos. There are tens of tech demos on medical image manipulation. Only they're not even working with ICOM files, which are the specific medical files. They're probably just having a JPEG or an X-ray that are manipulating, but that's very different from the real thing. An application, as I said, that reads ICOM files, that interacts with the PACS server of the hospital, and that fills all the steps.
Yscope is still in the test phase, but Fernando Nabais says tests have been promising so far. neurosurgeon Alexander Campus, says there's already a lot of interest and demand.
I received the emails and phone calls from all over the country. All of my neurosurgery directors, he wrote me an email asking when can I have it.
The long wait may come to an end soon. Welle plans to have the software on the market by the end of the year, starting with Portugal and then the rest of the world. Ian Silva, DW, Lisbon.
Now, a man who builds radio receivers from bacteria has to be a bit unusual, and so it is with Joe Davis, an American who merges art and science. Joe recently won a major prize for his bacterial radio at one of the world's top digital art festivals in Austria. Harry Skyling caught up with Joe Davis as he assembled the bacterial radio and had a strange acquaintance.
I designed it as a memorial to nasty storms.
Joe Davis, displaying his latest device. He hopes it will destroy storms.
The girl I took to see me prom out in Hurricane Camille, Hurricane Katrina devastated the landscape of my hometown of Mississippi, and like my father died in a hurricane, my mother died in a hurricane.
And he's nothing if not passionate about what he does.
It's like I had this idea of an arrow being wrapped in the sky and rage against God and nature, like Ahab grabbing onto the jaws of the whale.
Joe Davis' ideas involve genetics, biology, art, academia, religion, and science of all sorts. An ex-motorcycle mechanic from Mississippi, he's worked with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Harvard University, and as a guest professor at Germany's Bauhaus University.
These are like the troughs that hold the bacteria. This is part of the coil. These are the part of the capacitors. And in the next 2 days will be these are the masters and using all of the equipment to endorse the circuit-shaped PDMS to the outside bacteria. So I'm using the beautiful mineral cell connectors that I hook bacteria to wax and we have a radio. When I go home, hardly anybody says anything.
Sounds from a documentary film about Joe Davis' unconventional life.
You look for Tommy Brown to things you can talk about. Obviously. Car engines.
It's called Heaven and Earth. The filmmaker is Peter Sosowski.
I find it really inspirational that he's been able to follow his imagination the way he has and bring resources and scientists and into the projects that he does.
And this project, says Joe, is about recovering lost knowledge and demonstrating that not everything needs to be commercialized.
You can't go to the conventional U.S. radio store. There's one called Radio Shack. I mean, there are others. You can't go there anymore and buy the stuff you need to make a simple radio receiver. You can't buy variable capacitors, and you just can't buy all the components you need to build a custom radio. But if you look around your kitchen, you can make radios with things like steel wool and pencil points and cream of tartar and baking soda, and you can mine radio crystals from beach sand with a magnet.
Making crystal radios is not high-tech. It is a spiritual on the planet, and few would argue that it's art. But add bacteria and Joe Davis, and it wins prizes. Joe is scathing about artists who don't share his fascination for science and technology.
Artists are supposed to be able to open up windows on the world, and you really can't open a window on something you don't have a clue about. And, I mean, to really make art with any relevance or immediacy, you have to understand what's going on around you. There's a kind of magic, a wonderful magic about being able to, without batteries or plugging it in or paying anybody anything, just to pull, wisdom out of the cosmos. There's something about that we shouldn't forget.
Wolfgang Stocker, the engineer and artistic director of the Digital Arts Festival, Ars Electronica, has on the bacterial radio wavelength.